Okay, I want to start with a clarification, a warning, and a disclaimer.
All three, huh?
I do have a law degree. Clarification, I am a serving board trustee. However, what I'm going to tell you here today are my own opinions. I do not represent the board or the district in anything that I present here. The accuracy of all the material that I'm going to share, I'm fully responsible for it. That's the clarification. The warning, you will be sipping off a fire hose in the next 3 hours or less.
I thought the warning was the law degree.
If it feels like sipping from the fire hose, all I can say is just drink responsibly. And the third one is I do get distracted easily. So it is your job as much as it is mine to keep me on track. If you keep me on track, I'll be done in about 30 minutes and nobody gets hurt. Let's talk about property taxes. This is what, if you live in Plano, this is within the boundaries of Plano ISD, this is what you pay. The top line is the school board, the school district. That's the biggest one, $1.43.9 for every $100 of your property value. The second one is City of Plano, 46.03. Next, Collin County, 19 cents, and Collin College is the smallest one. Now, you may have heard and you may have received all kinds of flyers that talk about something that's called Taxparency. And the whole idea behind Taxparency is we have an issue with Recapture, also known as Chapter 41 of the Texas Education Code, or Robin Hood. And that is because this year we are going to pay the state of Texas $208 million. After last year we paid $154 million. And that is to equalize education in the state. So in order to put a big bright light on this, what we've done, and this is a group of districts, is we're going to separate this out and we're going to start talking about Recapture, because you need to know that when you pay your local, I'm going to say this again, your local property taxes, actually 39.4 cents today go to the state to equalize education. I testified in front of the Texas Senate for a special select committee for property tax reform and relief. And I told them this is a state property tax collected through the school districts. So we put a big bright light on it. And of course, when we put a light, we want to show you. Yes?
What was the Plano INS on the line below the
I will get there.
Okay.
I will get. That's a great question. I did not ask him to ask this. This is what it looks like. You can see that we went from the 155 to 208, 104 before. This is just growing like crazy. And what you see in blue is actually what we get to keep in our district. Another way, I'm sorry?
I just said, oh, wow.
Yes, I know. But here is something that I want you to pay attention to. And this is, we only talk about $1.17 and how this $1.17, I'm afraid of the dark. $1.17 gets distributed between our own M&O, which is maintenance and operations budget, and the state recapture tax. That's what we focus on. However, remember that Plano ISD did not take $1.17 for every $100. We took $1.43.9 cents. This is what it looks like. 39.4 cents goes to the state. 77.6 cents stay here, and you can see over time how this declines. And this, my friends, is what Taxparency is all about. Let's all talk about the state, because obviously being on a school board, you can have a lot of influence. I will see if you are asleep. So obviously this is where we're going to shine a light, because as trustees in the school board, we have a lot of control over what the state does, right? No, we don't. I want to shine a light tonight, on something else. What was your question?
That INS thing or...
This one.
Yeah, that one.
What is this one, this INS line? Because remember, the $1.43.9 cents is more than $1.17. It's actually more by 26.9 cents. And this is called INS. And you ask what INS is. You know, there are three types of questions. There is a bad question I don't have an answer to. There is a good question I do have an answer to. There is an excellent question, which is the next slide. INS stands for interest and sinking. You know what interest is, what sinking is. I actually like this commercial. I didn't know if we will be able to actually play this with sound, so I'm just going to tell you. There's a commercial, if you look it up on YouTube, it's called the German Coast Guard. And this young guy here gets stationed in the Coast Guard position, and all of a sudden on the radio here on the right, he hears, "Mayday, mayday, mayday, we are sinking, we are sinking." And he doesn't know what to do. He goes to the radio, "Hello, this is the German Coast Guard." And he goes, the guy on the other side, he goes, we are sinking, we need help, we are sinking." And he goes, "What are you sinking about?" So our sinking rate is really what we do to pay our debt. This is how we pay our principal. So interest goes to pay interest, principal sinking goes to pay the principal.
So
Now,
school bond payment.
school bond payment, yes. Why do we have debt? Why do we have debt at all? Well, there are several reasons. One of them is, and I looked through all the statutes all the way from the Section 8 of the Texas Constitution, the Texas Tax Code, the Texas Education Code, and there are provisions there. Actually, in our Constitution, there is a provision for us to collect taxes for a lot of things, including for buildings and capital equipment, but in the Texas Tax Code and in the Texas Education Code, the only two things that are listed that we as a school district can collect are for our maintenance and operations. This is salaries for the most part, you know, water and everything else, and for our debt, to pay off debt. There is no provision that says you can save money. Now, why is that? First of all, because school districts grow ahead of their ability to collect. So if all we do is collect 26.9 cents, it's going to be a while before we can start building schools. But what do we do that we already have students? Just like when you buy a house. You buy a house, you get a mortgage, and you start paying off the mortgage. So the debt is the school district's mortgage. So as we grow as a district, we need to build schools, and we need to start spending ahead of our ability to collect money. So what do? We take debt, we issue bonds, and then we collect INS, and we pay back for the bond. But that's great when we're growing. What happens when we are not growing? Because Plano ISD is not growing. Between last year and this year, last school year and this school year, Plano ISD lost just about 855 students. That's more than one full elementary school. We shrunk. We're at 54,000. We used to be at 55,000. So we're not growing. In fact, I asked our superintendent an interesting question. Can we sell a school? Don't laugh. Can we sell a school? We have a property. We have a building on it. Can we sell it? And so actually they are going to look at something that I don't think that a lot of school districts ever looked at. Can we sell a school? Now, 2016, we issued a bond. You probably remember I was the one bad trustee that voted against a bond in PISD. The reason I voted against it was because we did not split it into multiple propositions. Everything was bundled into one proposition. When this bond was coming out, this was the terminology that came out. And one of the statements that came out that really annoyed me was this one. We're doing all of those great things. We're collecting $481 million. By the way, we issued $497 million because we had 16 that were pre-approved in 2008. And we're going to do all those great things without a tax rate increase. We're doing this without raising the tax. And I kept telling them, every time you say we're doing this without raising the tax, what goes through my head is, I did not have a sexual relationship with this woman. Because we were not raising the tax rate, but what we knew was that the property values are going up close to 10%. So everybody knows that we're not raising the tax rate. What they don't know is that we're going to be paying 10% more. And we ended up paying 10% more. I want to show you what this did. Here, by the way, I see that some of you are taking photos. I have provided Mark with the PDF version of this presentation, and I'll let him just distribute it to any of you. Just let him know that you want it, or let me know. Here's what happened. You know, it's kind of funny. You remember how Robinhood keeps going up and what stays in the district keeps going down? Well, here's an interesting thing for you. In the last 5 years, what stays in the district if we don't just talk about the maintenance and operations budget, but we include our interest in sinking, what stays in the district is actually 10.5% higher than what it was 5 years ago. After recapture, we keep more. Now, if I look at it both on a resident basis and the average residence basis, and the what we're going to do is we're going to turn this around, and now you're going to be seeing me much better. So if we look at a residence basis, this is what happened. It went up 29% and 21% since we settled on the 26.9 cents per $100 value. If we look at it at a student basis, per student, what we are collecting went up 61% or 32% just in the last 3 years. Let that sink. Let's see who the biggest offenders are. I know, we keep looking at the city, and Tom, you know it's really your fault. You raised in dollars, you raised what the city is collecting by 4.2%. Ladies and gentlemen, we did that on INS in 6.1% in the last year. We raised what we are collecting, what the school district is collecting is 6.1% in dollars more than last year.
But that was just paid bonds that weren't going to increase anybody's taxes.
We'll get there. So, but yeah, now, if we're talking about $100 compared to what you currently pay the city, which is $1,700, we're not talking about $100. We're talking about $1,000, by the way, of which $287 goes to pay interest. The average house, the average homeowner within the boundaries of PISD pays $287 a year on a mortgage you didn't take. I'll continue. This is how much we pay. So we collected $142 million this year from taxpayers to pay our debt. $142 million. I've been on the board for 3.5 years, but when I joined, we collected 110. We now collect 142, of which $44.5 million goes to pay interest. You know this whole debate over the Performing Arts Center, a $70 million Performing Arts Center, $44.5 million we spend on interest in 1 year. Now, could we do it differently? So here is an example. I was told when we took this last bond that all the math was done, and by the time we finished taking this bond, which was a 5-year period, by that time, since we are paying, we will be back at exactly the same level. So essentially, this is what we will do. We took $500 million or $481 million. We took $500 million over 5 years. We're going to pay it back. There's going to be a certain amount of interest. In reality, it's the thing that you see on the right, because that $500 million rides on top of $750, actually $780 million. So yes, we are getting to exactly the same point where we started. However, the interest level is 4 times as much. We pay 4 times more for taking the same amount and paying off the same amount, because our starting point is not 0. Our starting point is $750 million. Now, theoretically, if this is what we did, if we started at 0, went up $500 million, paid off $500 million in 5 years, which is what we do. We pay off $500 million in 5 years today. If this is what we did, the efficiency of our collection of INS, those 26.9 cents, the efficiency would be 92%, which means that 92% would actually go to pay off the principal itself, pay off for your house, as opposed to pay off interest. Only 8% will go to interest. However, that's not where we are. This is where we are. We start at $750 million. The interest rate is 4 times as high, and our efficiency is 76%. Only 76% of what we collect actually goes to pay off principal. The rest, 24%, goes to pay off the interest, to pay the interest.
Why is interest 4 times higher on a short-term 5-year?
The reason it's higher, I'll go quickly back to this one. The reason it's higher is because you're paying interest not just on this, you're paying interest on this.
Oh, interest dollars.
Interest dollars,
Yeah.
yes. Not interest rate,
Right.
yes.
Interest dollars, okay.
See how they get you to talk about rates instead of dollars? But you're paying with dollars. You're not paying, you're going to the bank and you're not signing checks with 2.7%, right? Now,
0.1% of my bank.
this is where we might be going if we actually did not even pay off the $500 million that we took. Because what would happen here is the interest is not only 4 times as much, but it's actually rising. And our efficiency is going to be 68% over a 20-year period and going down. So we're going to be paying more and more on interest and less to pay off principal, which really allows us to build more things and get new, yes ma'am.
Before I forget this question, so I don't lose you, if we are losing schools, losing students, then isn't it rational to assume that we'll be taking in less money, and so therefore that efficiency rate will also drop because we'll have to.
Let's do this. Let me go through this. I have time for questions at the end. Okay? It's more complicated than what you said because we're talking about 2 different things. Anyway, however, what if, God forbid, this is what we do? We start at 750, we take 500 million, we pay off, and we get to a lower place, and we start going down and down. Yes, we may start at 4x interest, but the interest is declining, and we're going to start at 82% and improve the efficiency of those 26.9 cents to the point where we actually get to the 92%. Okay, here's something that I showed. I got elected on May of 2015. In June, my first board meeting, the first thing that I said was, wait, we have $853 million debt. What are we going to do to lower this debt? And I kept on pushing on this. I'm really happy to say that 2 days ago, we just signed a new policy called CCA Local that addresses how we handle debt and how do we take new debt and how do we pay off debt. Now, it's not done yet. There are things that we need to do after that, but I'll get to it. So then what I did was I wanted to present something. It was kind of funny because I said I want to present a few slides and there was like no mechanism for a board member to present slides, but we managed to get this into the agenda and I presented this and I said, look, this is where we are right now. You know, we're at $780 million interest rate. When we took this last bond was about 3%. This allowed us, if we get back to the same place next time, to take just about $480 million. Let's say 500. Now, interest rate went up, great. This allows us to take more and still use the same $140 million that we're collecting today. Not that we're not increasing the tax rate, we're not increasing dollars. We are reducing the tax rate and it still would allow us to take 550. But that's if interest rate goes down. What if interest rate goes up? And it can go up, and then what we can actually use is going to be less. Now, God forbid, what happens if we go all the way to, we're going to take a bond when we actually owe nothing? At that point, we can take another we take exactly the same $140 million that we collect today on INS. Property values may go up, we will lower the interest rate, still collect $140 million, and we can take we can use $116 million more. So I showed them all kinds of scenarios, and every time we issue a new bond and I ask this question, I get to see this chart. And this chart says, today we owe $958 million. We owe $958 million, but don't worry, this is going down to zero. And the first time I saw that, I thought, wow, this is really, really cool. So that means that between now and 2038, we will not take another bond. Well, we probably will. So it's not going to look like this. So how about this? How about if we look at what it looks like in history? Instead of looking 25 years forward, how about if we look 25 years back? Because obviously it's going to be something that goes down, right? Or not. You know, it might actually go up. And so this is what it looks like. You know, when we moved to Plano 15 years ago, we owed less than $400 million. In 1994, we owed less than $200 million. Today, we owe $958 million. It increased by 375%. 375% in 25 years. But let's be fair. I mean, Plano grew since 1994, right? So we really care about doing it per student. So let's look at per student. In blue, you're going to see where we are. And in blue, we're about $18,000. We owe about $18,000 per student. Now, these are districts that are just about our size, 40,000 and more. Okay, so I didn't take, there's like 1,200 districts in the state of Texas. I didn't take all of them. I just wanted to take those that have 45,000 students or more, so they're kind of comparable. We're there at 70 or almost 18,000. Anybody here who lives in Plano, I know at least one that belongs to Frisco ISD, you owe $61,000 per student. That's the mortgage that you took. By the way, obviously, we can't owe less. It has to be something like 17. Well, not necessarily. There's a district there, our size, that only owes $1,722 per student. So it can be done. Okay, so let's look at per student. Per student, our growth was 220% per student. So we can't talk about, but the district grew anymore, because now we're talking about per student. We grew. Our debt per student grew 220%. But wait, there's inflation, right? So let's look at this. Inflation in this period did 65%. So we need to apply inflation, right? Make sense? This is where you say yes. Thank you. So we're going to apply inflation. You know what? I'm going to go more aggressive than you. Why? Because 70.5% of what we spend of the bond dollars, we spend on construction. Construction actually grew faster than inflation. Construction index grew 127% and not 65. So you know what? I'm going to take the 127% growth. I'm going to apply 70.5% of it to our per student. And hopefully now we're going to see that we did not grow our debt per student, now that we adjusted for all of this. Or we're going to see that we grew it 94% per student. I want to share with you the policy. This is the policy that we just approved 2 days ago. The part in red, actually, this is my request to change it, that we don't just minimize the cost to taxpayer, but we structure debt to minimize interest costs to taxpayers. I wanted to be very, very specific with that. Another thing that we created is we created a regulation. Now, something to know, the board votes on policy. Regulation is subject to the superintendent and the CFO and others. I have to pause here for a second and say we just hired a new superintendent, Sarah Bonzer. We have a new CFO, Randy McDowell. Those are great people. I want you to know that those are great people. You know how critical I am of things like debt and budget, but those are great people. We're lucky to have them, and we should keep them. But they are subject to what the board tells them. The board is the one that says, the board needs to be the one that says, we need you to reduce debt. And if the board doesn't say it, the problem is that what we do is the same thing we've done always. This is how we do things around it. This is coming from the regulation, and I'm going to read part of it because this, to me, was the key thing. Because when I said, I'm having a hard time knowing if we're going to grow our debt or lower our debt. We need to have a long-term plan. The long-term plan cannot be just for the life of a single bond. It has to be longer than that. So if it's longer than that, how do we do that? And our CFO, in all honesty, said, I haven't seen something like this done before. So we talked about that, we looked at it, and I said, look, it's very simple. If the majority of what we do is construction, here's the thing. How many schools do we have? Do we know how many schools we have? Yes, we do. We have 72 schools. Do we know where they are? You know, last time we checked on the map. All 72 are on the map. Do we know when they were built? Yes, we do. Do we know when they were renovated? Yes. Can we project when do we need to renovate them again? Yes. We can create a plan. We can create this long-term plan and say, okay, this is what the district really needs. You know what? If we have spare money and we can build a performing arts center, I would actually build another football field and just make sure that we choose carefully who pours concrete there. Now, when I keep focusing on the debt and you know how we need to lower the debt, one of the comments that I get back is, but we have a AAA bond rating. It's as good as it gets, and by the way, it is. PISD has the highest bond rating ever. And if you want to know how important bond rating is to me, I would encourage you to read that testimony in front of the Commission in April of 2008 about the role of the bond rating or rating agencies, same agencies that rate our bond, in the market crash of 2008. Because all those mortgage-backed securities were rated really, really, really high by those same agencies. So, you know, we're in great shape. We have AAA. I don't care. All I care about is that we lower our debt, that we're more efficient in how we use this money, and if we're more efficient, guess what? We don't need more money. We're not a growing district. We don't need more money to build stuff. We have enough. Those $140 million that we're collecting today are more than what we need if we're efficient in how we use them. Now, the other thing that I hear is PISD has such a great place. And we are. Again, if you're comparing, then we are. But you know, comparing ourselves to others, if you want to do that, might as well do that all the way. So we like to compare ourselves and say that we're the second lowest tax rate, which we are, school district tax rate. Once again, Frisco is, where is Frisco? No, right above, with they're taking 40 cents INS. We have Louisville in our area taking 36.75 cents. So we are low. But if we want to compare ourselves and say, hey, we're better than the others, then let's just also remember that Texas ranks 41 out of 50 in education, and the U.S. ranks 24 in science, 24 in reading, 24 in math, 38 in science, 9 out of 18 in creative problem solving and fiscal financial literacy. Okay, so if we compare, then let's compare. But this is where we are. This is how much we owe. Those are our $958 million. Look at Louisville with 1.2 and Frisco with almost $2 billion. This is what they owe. But keep in mind one thing, and that is Frisco is a growing district. So they do have to build ahead. We are not a growing district here. And we need to remember that. We're not a growing district. Now, another thing when I bring this up, other than the AAA rating, which obviously is very important, other than that, one other thing that I hear is, but it's all for the children. By the way, this is one of the worst things in being on a school board. Everything you bring up, but it's for the children. I don't know why I'm looking at Connor, but it's for the children. So let me tell you two things about it's for the children. If we structure our debt in a way that we are more efficient in how we use, we can let the children have more things by still collecting $140 million. We don't need to collect more than 100. I still look at him when I talk about children. Okay, never mind. The other thing is when I hear, how can you object to this bond and so on? It's for the children. Ladies and gentlemen, so is the debt that we leave behind us. Because 2038, I don't know if I'm going to leave it 2038. Oops, my daughter is here. I will leave it 2038. But this debt is going to be paid by our children. She's going to be the one paying this debt. Connor is going to be paying this debt. I'm going to be long retired. But keep in mind that it's all it's not just for the children. What we're trying to do is good for the children. Not leaving debt behind us is good for the children. Being able to use 92% out of $140 million that we collect is good for the children. Let me summarize this and then we're going to open to questions. So first of all, interest and sinking is not subject to recapture. Whenever you hear Robin Hood, Recapture, Chapter 41, just remember they're talking about $1.17 and not the other part, which is INS. That's not subject to recapture. 2, PISD debt went up 375% since 1994. We currently owe $958 million. 220% growth on a per student basis. Even when we adjusted to the non-residential construction index, we still owe 94% more than we did in 1994. What we collect is just about 58% of what the city collects. Only for INS. It's 58% of what the city collects. So this is something to care about. This is a piece of property tax that you pay to care about. It grows faster. The city part of property taxes grew 4.2%. INS grew 6.1% in the last year. It grows faster. And finally, we pay $44.5 million in interest. That's $287 per average household every year for a mortgage you didn't ask for.